Okay, so I don't know, I guess before they get started, does everybody know John and Joe with Michigan Rural Water? And then I'll turn it right over to them, so.
My first question to you. I thought that was already.
Okay. Cross your fingers.
I guess my first question to everybody here, are you familiar with Michigan Rural and what we do? We're a USDA, EPA funded nonprofit. We're here, it's non-binding third party to help you through things. Rate study, we do rate study, reliability studies, a bunch of things. I'm gonna present the rate for the sewer. This is your current customer on your sewer rate. You have nobody out of town currently that I'm aware of. You have the equivalent of 1,708 users or individual meters. And each one is rated, each meter is rated on what is referred to as a residential equivalent unit. A residential equivalent unit, well, a one is a home. So if you have up there, you have a 3-inch meter, a 3-inch meter is the equivalent of 10.67 homes or 10 3/4 or 2/3 homes. Go to the units of water invoiced, 8. This is the amount of water that was our part of your water that was invoiced that went down to the sewers. There are issues with what's called infiltration. So the actual gallons you may or may not. How can I state this? This may not represent the actual volume of water treated at your wastewater plant due to what's called inflow and infiltration. Inflow and infiltration is groundwater or rainwater that has seeped into the system through possibly various things that could happen: catch basins, sump pumps, roof drains, cracks in the pipes, bad manholes, etc. The list is endless. So, but this is what was invoiced, and we used for this rate study 73,700,000 gallons that were invoiced per year on average for the last 3 years, from 4 years from 2018 to 2021. Pardon me?
Why did you take
4 years. Usually we do 4 years. It gives a better, we'll do 4, 5, or 3 years, depending upon the data. It gives us a better look at how much is actually treated. The more numbers you have, the better average you can get.
the better accuracy?
More accuracy, yes.
So essentially what we're trying to do is predict how much water you're gonna sell in the next year. So the only way we can do that is to have historical data to kind of estimate how much water you're probably going to sell or what is in the upcoming year.
This is our crystal ball. All right, from here, let's go to the equipment. I believe it's equipment replacement. That's what's labeled here. Right there, yes. This is the equipment. If you can move that over slightly to the left. Nope, the other way, I'm sorry. That's about as good as it's gonna get on that.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Click on the sound arrow over.
It's all the way over.
I think this is this one. It's slightly cut off, but you can see that there are different things like pumps on here, street projects. Or pump stations, pardon me, that's what PS means, they're all pump stations. Those pump stations are equipment that fail on a scheduled basis. A pump's only good for so long, and then you have to replace it. And this is what's representing these lift stations or these pump stations. And what your replacement is. This is what's called the equipment replacement fund. Kind of along the lines of, Joe will talk about an asset management plan and asset management. This is your asset management essentially at current time for your sewer plant and your sewer system. Now, I'm going to caution you, you are in the midst of an upgrade on your wastewater plant, as you're all aware of. So as that developed, I didn't put any of that equipment in because we are unsure of what is actually going to be there, how long it's going to last. There should be some, as the new equipment is added, should be some life expectancy predictions there. So that list will grow as soon as the plant's done. And we can get in there and take a look at things and look at the O&M manual and see what these predictive, they'd say the word predictive failures. It's hard, pump stations are hard in wastewater. You can put a brand new pump in and somebody throws something down the sewer the next day and all of a sudden that brand new pump is jumped. I've had that happen.
Are you seeing anything out of the ordinary for the length of time our material is lasting or pumps are lasting? Did you know that they in your town?
I don't know that right now. I'm kind of going right here on an average.
Gotcha.
We have some, usually pump's good for, we say pump good for, or station's good for 20 years. Pump's usually good for like 5-ish. So like I say, somebody, you put a brand new pump in the next day, somebody puts a rock down sewer and you get a rock jammed in it. I've seen that. I've seen 2x4s. I've seen kids toys. And I've seen a lot of stuff in there that's gone down the drain. It shouldn't go down the drain.
While we're on this, what pump station is 1970?
Beagle.
Depot Street?
Beagle.
Oh,
Yeah.
Beagle. I'm sorry.
You're good.
And this one, but I couldn't see which one. it was.
That's pushing near end of its life expectancy right there. 1970.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm a 1964 model, so I understand it's getting old and wear out too. Let's go for capital improvements.
It's not, is it the one before that or?
Yeah, right, 30. Right there. Working with your staff, this is the list of capital improvements that we came up with. As you can see, comes up to $687,000 reserved annually. Don't panic yet. If you can go bring that screen a bit to the right. Even though I didn't list it out, you will see you don't have to put in a full 387,000 because what you're doing, or you're saving up. Get a project done, then you save up, get a project. So that whole thing doesn't have to be reserved annually. As you can see there, set aside 260,000, you're looking at projects totaling in 2023 of 589,000. That brings it down. The second project there, 225 or 2025, you're looking, time you spend your reserve amount, you're down to 10 grand. So you don't have to fund this fully either, especially if you're looking at maybe loans or grants down the way. And this is something I'll talk about here in a minute. And at this point, we can go to the final page. Oh, yeah.
It's the other way, isn't it? Sorry.
No, that's fine. Oh, you read one. Right there. Got it. you can scroll up a little bit. What we essentially do on a rate study is first thing we do is we look at how much money it takes to run your system. How much money do you need to save for your assets to replace them, and how much money you need to save for your capital improvements. Then we have this pot of money that we divide. This pot over here is divided by the amount of REUs, which is based upon your meter size. And then this pot over here is divided by the volume of water invoiced. And then we come up with a per an REU charge and a per 1,000 gallon charge. In this case, I went through labor and benefits, $480,000, operation and maintenance, $515,700, for a grand total of $1 million to operate your system based on labor and benefits. Now, you should also keep in mind, you should have, according to AWWA standards, for the utility system, somewhere between 2 and 12 months reserve money of your O&M expenses in the bank. That's when crap hits the pan money. So if your wastewater guy comes in tomorrow and says pump station number or the Beagle Road lift station's done, there's no fixing it. I talked to my people. That equipment, 1970, no longer available. We got to rebuild it. And you need $120,000. You're not scrambling looking for where you need to get it. You have $500,000 in the bank. And I usually tell systems about 6 months is a good number. So for you, about 500,000. You could go a little bit lower, a little bit higher, but it's a nice happy medium. Excuse me. Additionally, you have some loans out there. And some required reserves totaling $382,183. That's your 3 loans, and then what's called your RRI, which is repair, replacement, and improvement fund from USDA of $30,000. That's actually your money that goes into an escrow account, essentially. You can touch it, but I would always call USDA and get approval and talk to them first. It's usually kind of the money of last resort. You try to make it. Additionally, your bond reserve, that goes in the bank. That's for your final payment. That one you're not touching. USDA will not allow you to touch that one. And then further down towards the bottom, you see equipment replacement. I put it under collection assets. It's at $56,480 a year, and capital improvements of $260,000 a year, based upon your analysis there. All total, $54.58 for a. You're using a 3/4 inch meter here, correct? Or
5/8, 5/8, sorry.
5/8, okay. It's in 3/4, but it'd be the same. So for your 5/8 inch meter, you should be charging $54.58 a month, plus $6.40 per 1,000 gallons. Now, I understand you've raised rates already. So you're, I understand it was 3% across the board, correct, Daniel?
Yes.
So, yeah, you're probably a little bit shy. I'm looking at 5 and 6.7%. But as I mentioned, you don't have to fund your capital improvements fully. You're not under any law or requirement to do so. So you're just a little bit, probably just a little bit shy in your CIP fund. Something to consider next year when it comes time.
What do you mean we're shocked? Where am I missing?
Pardon me?
How are we shocked? What am I
Okay, shy right here.
Yeah.
Yep, right here and right here. Yep. You should but 5% raise on the ready to serve and a 6.7% on the commodity charge. And one thing, and I'll let Joe reiterate too, you should be moving your rates up every year. Just a little bit. It prevents these huge raises of a few years ago that you had to do. If you do it a little bit, people adjust to that. I can adjust to 5% or 3% raise. But all of a sudden, my bill goes up 30%. So now I'm gonna have. And it keeps up with rates of inflation. Maybe not this last year, but.
It used to keep up.
It used to, yeah, until this last year, but you know, it'll come back around.
So
It might be a little longer, but.
we expect much higher increases in the future due to the inflation rate being higher and economists are saying that they're gonna stay there for an extended period of time. So if inflation rates stay high, wouldn't that mean that we're gonna have to raise to around at least 8%, if not 10 or 15% per year?
Well, I hate to say it, but quite possibly. And I can tell you right now, the water equipment rate has skyrocketed. Whiteford Township, just around the corner, was quoted a new water tower at $800,000 3 years ago. That water tower today costs 1.9 million. We're seeing surcharges on our everyday equipment such as Hawk. Hawk is one of the main suppliers of lab equipment. They have a 17% surcharge right now. So they raise the rate 17%. Well, raising the rate 17%, you know what I mean? So unfortunately, I think, yeah, you probably will, just to maintain where you're at.
I was just, while we were talking, I was looking on my phone at others to rate
Mhm.
the other person.
Okay.
And it looks like the average per household. So can you just very simply in layman's terms, why it's 80?
Okay, I can. Everybody's different. It's hard to compare apples to apples when you're talking with sewer. I'll give you an example, City of Morenci, it's facultative lagoons. They put it into lagoon structure, it sits there. They have no energy costs, no chemical costs. No, labor costs, or minimal labor costs versus you have a plant. So you have to have 2 or 3 people there that are specialty to run that plant. You have an electric cost, you have a chemical cost. Additionally, some places have more loans than others. City of Morenci doesn't have any loans. You have 3.
So you're saying what it comes down to is we're paying a much higher rate because of decisions that people previously had.
Maybe some respect, I don't know if it's right. Addition, but you're also looking at the level of treatment that you are required to provide is much greater than say the City of Morenci. Probably,
You guys use more water, so you have to treat more water. If we gotta get it flooded, you gotta treat it faster. So you look like you have to have a plant that allows you to flood faster.
right,
You need to cost because of that. Whereas I mean, big lagoons, they're mainly designed for small, well,
right.
they're very limited on the amount of space that they always to treat the water of the lagoon.
Well, when I was in the Marine Corps out at 29 homes, they had lagoons that are, and there's over 100,000 people on that. Confused, there's only 3,000 people listed roughly.
It depends upon what your receiving streams are like too, because your permits for discharge are based off upon your receiving stream, what's going into.
What would be your recommendation for how we reduce costs?
Pretty bare bones in theirs. And I can tell you too, that these are rates are starting to go up all over the state. You know, better water things too.
You do Adrian. Is that her in water, $40?
I did not do anything. I've got, just with Adrian, I don't know.
More people you didn't want to, this.
In some respects.
Yeah. Due more people to split up the pie of it. However, with those increases in people, you also have to have bigger facilities, more of them. You're drinking more water, so you're that much more.
Not really, you have more people, you got less cost.
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
We can help.
That's the mindset people have.
Can help. And you don't have people living up that high. However, yeah, there's some also some drawbacks to it too, because you're in the, you're one cost. Dollar water is probably significantly higher. You guys, because they're using more water than water. So, yeah, they have more people, the costs are also your own. Sometimes you can get it more into that, if you get more people. Then you run into the, like, well, how much, like John mentioned, how much you have in loans? How much debt do you have? And unfortunately, the debt definitely adds to cost. Usually debt also when you have new facilities. So you spend less on your operation and maintenance side of things because you don't have to, you're not repairing stuff all the time. You're not dealing with equipment where you're constantly having to do repairs. So there's pluses and minuses to both sides. And I will say most of the communities that run into it don't have a lot on the debt side. It's coming. They just haven't got there yet.
Because they're not as old as we are. They haven't gone through that time period yet. So when their stuff starts getting old, they're gonna be going through a lot of difficulties.
Yeah.
That's why it's almost impossible to find an apples to apples comparison, because even if you're to find that it's exactly the same as Blissfield, you don't, you also have to factor in there what it takes to have.
Like what you're saying is part of the reason why our bills are high, because it is new. But then, compared to other places where it's older, but then by that token, our prices would be comparatively going down over places. And you're telling us
Not dramatic, like if you guys raise 3% and like the funds are raised in the way that it's going compared to the 5%, 7% increase. I've seen many races that have done over the last year and a half where you're talking 30, 40, 50, 100% raises. Their cost is just, I don't know if that fast.
Dramatic is what we did in 2020.
Correct.
And then instead of applying a 3% increase in 21, we gave our customers a year off of a rate increase. Just because we were starting to accumulate some money in those funds and things were going along pretty good with the economy, we decided as a group to pull back on that increase. And then this year we voted to increase it 3%. So we still didn't do what we could have.
But our rates were, and I think
Or what's recommended
the,
for the sake of our customers.
our significant increase in 2020, in my opinion, truly is from some, for lack of better words, management, when we had 10 years, 5 years with no increase, we had to pick up for that somehow. And so that was significant, was trying to come out of the hole. We literally were in the negative. And so we had to come out of the hole. We had to make that change. And then of course, the state system had to put away. That's. But you're right with having to go back. It was a significant, it was, and it wasn't all there. It was making up for some poor decision making.
And I would say that part of this, you reading due to inflation, yes, yeah. Yeah, it's baked in. Right, so the 3% is probably a pretty accurate statement prior to.
You said which one?
Prior to.
Goes a switchboard, so they take keep going that way, keep going.
Yeah.
Volumes of this is okay.
Very significant. Just about everything.
Go back that way. Maybe
And these-
just look at it.
Both of these funds are enterprise funds. So they have to be self-supporting based
Keep
on
going.
what's taken in from the rate.
Keep going.
There's no tax money that goes into these. It's all rate based. So all the operational costs, all the replacement costs is based
I
on
guess I didn't do-
what those rates do. None of your property taxes go into this.
And that's by law.
It's,
So I'm sorry, Gwen. I was just gonna add too that, this is unfortunately not unique because Celine just increased their rate 60% for utilities over the next 5 years because, there was a huge press release that went out for it because of the rising cost of infrastructure replacement and they did, well, I think it appears something similar where they didn't do increases for a really long time and then had to play that catch-up game.
Did you mention? Little desert. So they get a lot of evaporation. And they can treat their water. Yeah.
we don't have wells. And I think that adds a lot to it.
It does, Joe can touch on, he does the water, but I'll say that you have what's called an after treatment facility. That after treatment stands for full treatment because you're using river water. It has a very high level of standards you have to meet because you are treating water that does have a bacteria, does have bacteria in it. Whereas if you have something that's a well, you don't have that bacteria, but I can also tell you, working with White Township around here, you're looking at a hardness of 800 and 1200 in their ones, which is beyond the objectionable point where they have to have softeners to put in.
There used to be wells in this town and they got rid of them because
Because of that, yep. That
they
makes
were
sense.
hard to maintain. They were down as park.
Yeah.
Jen, so with the replacements and things like this is not taking into consideration a new lab.
Correct. It's not taken into any lab equipment, anything that,
No, the
that lab equipment's gonna fail. or-
facility of our.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That is not taken into consideration.
It's not taken into the
No,
facility yet.
this is just
Now, granted, it's gonna be new, so there's gonna be a lot of piece of equipment, and it's gonna be brand new, 2022, 20 years out to replace it. But it's a lot easier to save up over 20 years than it is all of a sudden to come, oh, I only got 5 years left, I gotta come up with $50,000 to replace this equipment, so I gotta put away 10,000 each year, which is spreading it over 20, now you're looking 500.
So the 5%. Again, just take care of that, doesn't take care of the labs that we're gonna be needing. So we're gonna have to have a larger increase than 5% next year in order to plan for everything that needs to be done.
For the long term your system. Yeah. The operator. So usually when somebody goes up there, yeah, through, I'm gonna show you everything you do.
Or it gets down to the, water.
Yeah.
I would say that, the guy that worked down there was raving down, and Bo absolutely loved his job. And he was enjoyable.
So the only thing that I would just heads up, if you guys could just schedule that tour at the wastewater treatment plant right now with the construction, because there are certain times that for safety, we can't have you out there, but we could definitely accommodate something within your schedule to have a tour.
Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, I'd be more worried about boots than that. Don't wear dress shoes out there. Okay. Yeah, I keep spare boots in my office, so.
Any questions? Any other?
Jen, I do. What, okay, so. with analysis that you did.
I do, so they send them, they both send them to me so that in the future, like I can edit and modify them too.
Would you think it would be,
Well, I'd say that, you pay through your tax dollars, yes, you do.
Yeah, we can play with them and I can send them to you too, because you can probably figure it out.
Danielle and I have already talked about it too, so.
Can you put our man John on your magical calendar pre-budget so that we can have this discussion pre-budget for next year?
Yes. Also, John and Joe were both kind enough to send me these Excel sheets and said that we can enter input information as well. Not that they can't come, but they have been generous enough. We've not paid for anything at this point, and I don't want to abuse that either. I don't know. Okay. Perfect.
USDA pays in EPA fees.
Okay.
We probably would do this.
And certainly I will put it on my calendar as well, but we'll be able to input some data ourselves so that we have this moving forward, or the same tool that they've used.
What's nice about us too is that we are a third party. I don't have any ties to this community. I can come in and say, this is the way it is, and then walk away, because they say I live, if anybody's ever heard of Beale City, that's where I live, which is up by Mount Pleasant. Joe lives in Williamston, so.
And that's the only do with this program, something behind the story, Matt. We input the data that you have. Call us back at any
It's like I mentioned here, that you probably the one that's gonna take the hit on this and raise 3.5 is probably gonna take a budget hit, is probably the capital improvement plan. All that does is make those capital improvement plans instead of, okay, we're 2025, or we're gonna do 2020. That's up to you as a body. In the community. Wastewater operator, all that stuff. All right, Joe. Turn it over to you.
Sounds good.
Hey, Joe, what's your last name?
And down.
We call him.
You got a cover? I do.
Card you got.
Yeah, I got way into it. It's remarkable. As John did, my rate, the formatting of the is gonna look a little bit different on the other side. But the program itself does the exact same thing. The formatting is just the way that it looks. It's simply the only difference you're gonna see between the program that I use and the one he uses. And the only reason for that is because I use the latest and greatest kind of update, and he's using like an older version of it.
Okay, this is the one I'm used to using. With it.
And I learned the new version, so that's the one I.
Nineteen sixty.
The difference is the just change. No difference in really how it works. The end result is though. There may be some differences in how. So you got water up.
What tab do you want me on first?
One is John did with the current rates and customers tab 22. Go ahead to normal view. I must not have switched it back over. No, it's in, just gotta go to view. And top left.
Oh, there it is. I'm like, where is it?
That'll look better. Okay. Essentially, this is just a list of the number of customers you have for the meter size, with some added to the 3/4 inch customers, because you have some certain customers that get charged extra for use. So the multi-unit buildings are the prime example. If you have one building that's got 2 apartments in it and a business downstairs type of thing, instead of just a 3/4 inch meter charge, they're getting charged 3. Just because they're essentially 3 separate entities, even though they all are contained in the same. So that's why that number, that's just the top number is a little bit higher than.
How consistent is that? Compared to other communities?
Very. Not everybody charges for the multi-unit, but most places do. The reason behind doing that is because what happens if you strictly charge by the meter size, what happens is you wind up with so the percentage of water used by that multi-unit business. They, on a small scale, it's hard to get percentages, but like everyone does like theme parks, and I've actually done them to figure it out. And the one example I had, one community, they were charging by the meter size, not by the number of units. Well, I think if I remember right, the amount of water used of the whole, like of the whole city, that basically multi-unit, giant multi-unit complex, was about 20% of the total water used by the entire city. Well, but the revenue that they actually were coming in, the revenue that they were coming into the city, was only about 15%. So essentially, customers being subsidizing that other 5%. So when you start charging by the multi-unit instead of by the meter size, it brings the percentage of the amount of water that they use and the amount of revenue that they pay, it evens things out. Okay.
No, say that one more time.
The amount of water they use on a percentage wise versus the whole, it brings the revenue that they pay towards that pot of money that's needed to run your system, brings that up into an equal scheme. Okay. If you don't charge by the multi-unit, what tends to happen is you wind up with, they're using more water, but the amount of revenue that they pay in, the amount of money they pay in is a less percentage of that. So when you charge by the unit, it brings the numbers. And it could boil the math down into like a small, like say business with 2 apartments upstairs, but it would be like in less than percentages. Wise. I used the trailer park because that was like such a big scale. It was easier to do the percentages, but the math can be done to show why it needs to be, but it's a very common practice. Not, and I'm not gonna say like you're gonna find many systems in Michigan and across the country that don't charge for that. But I would say there's a majority of people do. It is an industry standard. You charge by the number of units, which.
Then to determine what constitutes that unit, you know, because usage changes, apartments change. You know, it goes from 2 units to 3 units, or back to 1 unit. So it's something that we be consistent.
We had a conversation about this before meetings. There is what we refer to as an REU table, right? That. Yeah.
Which is a thing.
Person.
Yeah, that type of unit is very common when you don't have meters.
Right.
Because that's the only way to turn it. You can't expect. So in the case where you might have just the units using water with. In fact, the reason we run into this is because back in the day, like a lot of these, especially downtown areas, where you got very big buildings. And the use of those buildings is being at the time. And so you wind up with like from the water service, multiple different types of entities. Apartments, business downstairs, very common in the older downtown. Whereas if like you had a new apartment, it's very likely, and a lot of times it's common in our case, right, where every unit in that apartment would have its own meter. That way you could definitely try to use the resident in that apartment and then charge them more equitably that way. Because they're paying for only the water they're using. So there's 5 people crammed in the apartment, and the apartment next door to like 1 person, they're gonna pay less because they're using less water lately. Okay, unfortunately, when you got 1 meter servicing multiple units, multiple apartments, whatever the case may be, or combination thereof, you gotta try to find some way to make it an equitable supply to make sure that they're paying essentially their fair share of the money that would be required from the system. So that's why we try to find multiple units, pretty common practice, kind of accomplish that and make it more even. Because even though it might be a very small percentage, if you're only talking about the meter side and there's multiple units going on, they're using one water, but your bigger cost, a lot of times on that base side, you're not bringing in that guaranteed revenue, they're not paying as much as they use. They don't wind up contributing as much, and that's on that.
The most part, I still be able to determine like how we actually physically calculate those units, how do we determine what makes a unit, how we don't have the staffing or the manpower to, call up every multi-use business or building in town every year and say, did your usage change? Did your units change? How do we offset those?
True.
Those
We haven't,
charges.
I didn't dive into the ordinance, see how that's going on. Typically your ordinance is about what is single entity. Whether that's, when do you make that split between one apartment? What usually is the fact that any person that wants to and request somebody to come in and do an inspection. Because you might get a business owner comes in and totally take all the apartments out. Well, at that point, yes, you would want some avenue where they can come in and say, hey, this situation like this has changed. And see if we should. How we. If you've got one business, it's just a business. If you got multiple units, like in an apartment type situation, you know what? If this unit's got a bathroom and kitchen, it's an apartment, and the same thing happens right next door, even though it might have used to be just one apartment. You put a wall down the middle of it, and bathroom and kitchen, and now each one has got a bathroom and that.
And then we probably should revisit ordinances too, not that we're possibly now, but say somebody builds some row houses or, you know, just an 8-unit complex. You know, saying, okay, you get a 2-unit or a 2-inch meter that feeds these 8 units. We say you build an 8-unit apartment complex, each unit has its own meter rather than, you know, saying, okay,
Yeah.
state plumbing code allows, you know, 8 units on a 2-inch meter.
Correct.
But we should split.
Yeah, that would be up to you guys to decide what type of kind of system you want us to be in that.
You should have at very least a policy in play. That way, written, is approved by this commission. That way, you know, we don't get a bit different. Protecting from all of
So that, I mean, a prime example of that is I used the word converting function, and they had kind of a wide anywhere from that like 10-unit apartment building that had a single meter down to, you know, a much newer one, and now there's like the new specs that they have. Now they want to see that advantage. The water comes into the mechanical room there. Well, but it's it's probably a much more equitable way to split up how much water at least is used by each being there. But on the flip side, when that happens, they're getting charged that availability charge for everything. Meters. Even though they're all contained in one building, there's still separate entities. You could take that same space and plug it into it on its own separate lot, and it would fully function as a house. The businesses work the same way. You could take that business in that space, and you can set it up in its own separate building, and it would still function as a separate unit. You know, in the apartment, like if you got one split side and there's like no bathroom and kitchen, you couldn't really consider that a separate unit because you couldn't take that, take it by itself and have it function because it doesn't have, you know, things that it's actually. How you guys kind of do that is do you have the latest concept? No matter who comes in, wants to do whatever. What we're doing. I mean, you can't really focus that on like, you know, your downtown, you know, buildings and stuff like that. But kind of that same principle to try to get an equitable.
Sorry, I was trying to fix the,
Okay, so on the water side, you guys do have some outside the village limits customers, and they're charged at a separate rate. I believe it's two times, what the, city customers are charged. Again, across the board, this is one of those things that's up to you guys, and probably a board long before you made the decision that hey, we're gonna charge them twice as much. Part of that is because to get water out to them, there was a significant expense to get that water main out. Possibly upgrades to a plant lines in there. That's been trying to recoup that extra cost that was put on and not force it on your city customer. A little bit higher. Again, some places do it, some places don't. It's pretty common practice though for this. And then we also have 3 other oddball rates that have to do with that plant, right? And they get built. So from there we go over to the. You skip 22.5 and we're at 23.
Really, that infrastructure is paid off. Say we ran, you know, the water line to Riga and it cost us this much, and now we're consistently paying those outside customers to get to Riga. Average double rates. I mean, that technically not kind of fair either, because sooner or later
that.
we pay off that infrastructure.
That of what happened, development part of it is you're paying for the blood, sweat, and tears that the community did within the system originally. So part of that is. And
But again, like you said, if eventually they do recoup all those costs, it would be up to whatever board's in place at that time. If you guys made the decision where you want to say, okay, They paid they paid for all the costs associated with buying into the system, and they paid for all the costs to extend the water main and get everything up there, because at that time we said, okay, we're gonna charge them the same as city customers.
Which we do for Riga. They pay the inside, they pay the same rate as our residents. Correct. So they pay us the same, that I should clarify. Riga does charge them additional, and that money is similar to, they use that portion to maintain their system and do upgrades, repairs, maintenance, whatever they need, similar to us.
Customers, like on Silverhorn, halfway between both. That are paying double technically outside the limits.
Yeah,
Along with us in. Regional plan, they're getting the increases now, they're getting the 5 and the 7% increases now. They'll pay for the new plan, yet they're also still, quote, double bill for that infrastructure that we originally put in there to get to Riga, in which we don't even know, is it paid off, is it not paid off? So they're forever gonna pay double. When really, now they're kind of included in the system and it's paid off, they should pay the same.
but are they considered Riga? I'd have to look at that. Yeah.
But it would fractionally also raise everybody else's rates in the city just a little bit to make up for the loss of revenue that you see. It's not gonna be, it might be a penny, because there's only 28 of those. There's not like, it's not gonna be huge revenue loss if you bring them down to the rate that you turn. There is that, because the amount of money when the rate provider figures it out, the amount of money that you guys need to run your system, that doesn't pay. What you guys have control of is how that portion is divvied up to levels. And that is completely and totally up to you guys. But this rate provider basically just takes what you guys have in place and then figures out, this is what the rates, according to the rates that were already in place. If you want to look into we can do all that. If the body want to look at, aging out structure. Okay, so this one again, whereas in John's kind of had the meter equivalents all like together with the number of customers, this one kind of splits it out a little bit different. Okay, but again, it's that same thing. That column in yellow shows what the meter equivalents are based on that 5/8 by 3/4 inch meter size, that being 1, and then how much more times you get for all the other ones. These meter equivalents are follow exactly the AWWA equivalents that are spelled out. That AWWA as a body came out as like an industry standard to use for meter equivalents. So you guys are right on track with an industry standard that's been proven to kind of be effective in like figuring out exactly how much you're going to charge for that larger customer that needs. Okay, this is not really what it is. Then you guys are fine. Water. So water is that okay, because we put those historical data in there. There you can see the total volume of water sold. And corresponding with my understanding. Okay. So To estimate for that, we went under the assumption that the ethanol plant wasn't gonna fire back up again. So with that, we basically had kind of 1 year's worth of data to use, calculate how much water you guys probably are gonna sell. And that's that last year's kind of usage was at 81,550,000 roughly. Okay, and then we actually used one of the minimum, that's kind of the minimum of all of those. So it's not necessarily all the 2020 water usage. It's also very common if you're gonna raise rates even a little bit, people tend to use less water. Okay, so it's very common to knock a little bit off like what you sold last year, because if you're gonna raise rates, people are like, we're gonna use less water, and they do. We've seen it time and time again.
It goes up for a while,
And then it comes back up, but
usually not quite to where it was.
so over the next year or so, you guys probably aren't gonna sell. So, again, that's where we came up with that. Kind of that's where we're at, maybe you guys could sell. All right, let's go. Oh, yeah, keep going. Expenses, the current income, the expenses, this just like your budget sharing numbers. That schedule is just what you guys currently have to pay for home. Equipment replacement. Okay, so equipment replacement, I'll tell you, this is the same type of list that John had, only on the water side, this is much more significant list. Okay, this first equipment replacement one here on this tab, this is all the water plant equipment that's currently there on site. And what we did when Nora and I sat down to calculate this is we took all the equipment that's there at the plant. We tried to figure out approximately how long that equipment is supposed to last for, how much it's going to cost to replace that equipment, and with that, it spits out number. This is how much you have to save annually in order to make sure that when that equipment breaks, there's money in the bank. This is stuff that's essential to make sure that your water still gets getting pumped out to your customers at the quality that it's supposed to be. Okay. I take this in like a real world situation, like if your furnace breaks, oh, you don't have electric, but we'll just save some money over the next 5 years and then we'll replace the furnace in like 5 years time. I mean, you have to really. So that's what this fund is trying to do. Plans to be very similar to this, and we better. When you guys are asking what you benefit. In a year from now, you know, much better idea of what is with. And like John said. Waiting to tell you that. That's the only way that we really have to pay. In order to make sure the running balance. That means that every year as stuff populates and there's place, yeah, the account builds up money and then the following year there's some big expense and then knocks it back down and you start saving again, so there's more equipment and it kind of makes the running balance bigger. And we wanted to kind of the idea being that we want to stay on the flat. We always want to make sure that there's some money in there. And with that, we needed about 95 to pay for that. Aside from the 2025 year that you see up there's red, or there's so many things at the plant that need to be replaced. There was a whole lot of expenses. Kind of in red, probably gonna have to cover it that year, or there might be some of that equipment that might last a little bit longer. It's been years. So, as it. This one is on expenses, and then this side is predominantly just your water meters. That's it. Because the water that's covered in a contract. So we very double dip. With the meter replacements, we've got. Planning on pulling some money out of the reserve funds that we have, And then probably about $60,000 that you have to generate through rates in order to make sure that you kind of stay mostly in the black. There's those 3 years there were in the red, but again, because that big expense is coming at such a short period of time, we can let, well, there's still some kind of some room in your reserves that if you had to, or, you know, you get to the money for, you know, if you push it back a year, you have another year to save or some difference like that. But essentially that creates that running balance. Then if you like scroll the panels, scroll down a little bit for us, you can see like, so we put a 20-year life cycle on meters, which is about, that's pretty industry standard normal. So you can see if your account balance starts building up, but then all of a sudden in 20 years from 24, you're gonna have that big giant expensive meter replacement. In which case it knocks it. And there's still a little bit of wiggle there. Find a good balance between making sure that it can get funded in the 2 or 3 years, you gotta want to replace all the meters. And still generate. Capital. Okay, so capital improvements, similar to John last year, is all the capital improvements stuff that came up here as a capital improvement plan that was kind of put together. I forget what engineering put together for you guys, but that's where I pulled these numbers from. Okay. Now, off of this list, the reason why there were some blanks up at the top is because a lot of the stuff that was on that capital improvement plan, which I'm sure you guys have seen, at least at some point in time, was a bunch of equipment in the water treatment plant that needed to be replaced. So that's why there's some, because I took it out of the capital improvements and it's in the equipment replacement. Okay, that's why there's. Okay, but essentially it's a lot of, you know, the after purchase and then a lot of water main replacements. So with that, I just right. You go up and you see on our running balance on the capital improvement, years here, but then we go into the red big time. There's a 300,000 that number in that green box. That's there's rates will generate to save that amount of money every year to try to fund these capital improvement projects. Which will get some of these initial projects paid for, but as you can see, it's going to leave you guys short if you fund them through rates. And again, that number we can kind of play around with because if you decide you want to put out capital improvements for a little bit longer, that's one option. Or if you go for loans or grants or stuff like that, that would affect that number. But as of right now, at 300,000 is kind of number we get in there so that we can at least make sure that some of these capital improvements can get done. Because the bad thing about putting them on is they don't go away. Problems don't go away. The maintenance costs go away. There's going to be more main breaks. There's more issues that you got to deal with, but they never go away. Eventually, all that stuff's going to have to be replaced. Okay? It's similar to you guys buying a car. If you bought a car and never did oil change, never replaced the brakes, the car probably wouldn't last for it. Okay. Proper maintenance, proper maintaining all of that stuff. Eventually, everything needs to be replaced before. I don't have anything in water and sewer that lasts.
I see you have dam removal on there, 24. You guys getting involved in that as far as when if we remove the dam? It was.
No. So that's gonna be engineers and DNR and Eagle that would do that.
We stay there. And it was plugged in because it was on your capital improvement plan. There was some cost associated with that you guys were going to see, right? So if that doesn't wind up happening, yeah, we can remove it off of the list, but as of right now, that's on your capital. Like I said, and John said earlier in the story too, that number you kind of play around with a little bit. You can play around with the equipment replacement too. Know that if you lower the amount that you fund the equipment replacement, upgrade, I have the money. And then you gotta go out and get a short-term loan real quick. They want to make sure. And water side.
We've been submitting wastewater annually now too.
It's not about practice, not necessarily required, but that's all. Starting to do it now.
I'd say they've been requiring us annually to revise and submit it. I'm not sure if we did, it was before my time.
It's good practice across the board, and you can continue to keep on going north. and have it function. That's where we see a lot of. Don't plan. Don't plan. Again. Thing as we go through, we add up all the expenses you guys have, that's in that top gap, the administration, the water distribution, and the water plant expenses. For total operation and maintenance expenses of about $1.4 million. We add on the bond that you guys have, your loan payment, which is either about $130,000, gets added to that, for a total of about 1.557 million. And then the red underneath it, even though red's usually bad, in this case, red is actually good. That's your non-sales. So in order down the plant, that crew down there, they pull in, they do outside water sampling. There's outside water sales, so for like bulk customers, water haulers, that kind of thing. That kind of revenue is factored in there, which actually helps to offset your costs. Okay, it actually helps keep your costs a little bit. All right, scroll down a little bit more. And then we add in our equipment replacement. The 95 on the first asset management, plant maintenance, and then the 60 on the distribution side. It gives us basically the bottom line and putting in the numbers. You guys, this was pretty cool. The only thing with that, even the rule for that capital improvement will quite be something quite as much as what is what we were what we inputted into the program. But the 3%, and that's what was discussed before. Now a couple of rate studies where they haven't changed rates in 10 years and wound up with a 30 or 40% increase, and that it just raised 3% every year. If they wouldn't have customers paying them, they're going to why am I raised? Why did they start? Fortunately, I'd love to provide free water and sewer services to everybody. Unfortunately, there's the only way to do that is that all the vendors gave us all of our pumps and everything free and all of our chemicals free, and I don't think that's gonna happen. Unfortunately, there's costs.
You did get a state.
I did one rate study one time. For community with bad rates. Gonna happen.
The loans that are available for water and sewer projects. Unfortunately, you've got to pay, but you're not seeing any advantage. You know, if you're able to plan far enough in the future to save up the money where you can do more of that stuff, it's to cut down on. That'd be the only thing.
Instead of going out, what we get, $8 million worth of loans for the wastewater treatment plant, we could have
Unfortunately,
paid a quarter of it or
Yeah.
something.
there's a lot of talk lately, especially with water affordability, and that goes for the sewer side too. And most of my experience with doing this for many years, I've seen is most of the time with water affordability, it's is because there wasn't any long-term plan. One levels that we put on, and then we don't plan digging it for that.
Everything that's.
Probably flat.
Yeah. Well, no, one looked at me and one time he said, that's not going to work now. You're right, hometown.
What kind of rates are we looking at for the loans for capital?
Well, next.
Sorry.
All right. So we can play around with the numbers, like I said, and we can show you this. This wouldn't be a loan because you're gonna have interest on top of it, but see how we're in the red for so much in that running balance. So, let's say put $400,000 into that green tab, will you? Okay, all right, that gets us, scroll down a little bit and see where. We got one in the red, and then we get, we go a few more years without getting in the red. Go back up. Put in 500,000. Yeah. So now we're up to like a 14% increase, 15% increase, averages out to about a 15% increase. If you did an equal percentage increase on that, that's the fund those capital improvements in-house without interest. So if you had interest.
Makes sense, just like anybody else to buy your home loan like I did. I bought my home loan before it was great skyrocket. Wouldn't it make sense to go ahead and do some of these projects, take advantage of the ultra low interest rate rather than have your statement get decimated with inflation? You said yourself that the cost of you, before that, the cost of homes has went up over what, 15%?
Oh, yeah.
They have done much time.
We're gonna get absolutely annihilated if we keep saving this kind of money, our savings are gonna evaporate.
Problem is how to. Why can't?
Yeah.
Well, and labor.
It's gonna get better. It's gonna get better.
The fortunate side is, yes, costs are. However, when it comes to wires. USDA is equal to. You know, if you gotta go back out.
Sounds like a big conversation. Might be.
Well, but you can't open a line of credit with USDA. We have to have a loan and an appropriate project to allocate those loans, which we do with the wastewater treatment. So as some of these smaller projects come up, they probably don't even qualify for USDA.
The lab.
They could.
Yeah, no large project.
Would be the.
And anytime we do a larger project, we take into consideration people.
That people, since the 2011.
That bond, 2043, I think it is. I,
So keep going. There's 42.
you're saying for the 2000, oh yeah, 31. Sorry. Just trying to.
31.
Yes, I guess, well, I kind of got the answer then, that you guys would not be the ones to say, okay, this is how we find that fine line of how much do we produce, how much do we sell versus adding staff and adding, increasing operational costs. So I guess that goes back to an engineer instead rather wise. So, the best solution for us is to sell more water, like we were doing with the outlook plant.
Well, I mean, that definitely has affected what you guys did.
Your business product is water and water.
That's right.
My wife was a glass store and we're glass and tell. Profits to stay with usable water selling.
But we want to sell just enough to where, again, our plant's rated for optimal capacity, where we're not having to staff 3 shifts to operate it, less than that sort of thing. So again,
Using that extra,
How do we find that?
million gallons of water you guys used to do also had more cost.
There are more costs.
Right.
You're right. You have to run that 24. Your plant, as long as somebody's producing water, has to be staffed. That's a requirement by regulation in the state. So as long as they're producing water, somebody has to be there.
So,
For
yeah, the loss of everything, it's not, yes, it's probably pretty significant from that, I'm saying, I use that way. Flip side, though, you lower your operational expense, because now you didn't have to have somebody there 24 hours a day. Use that, less electricity costs less, gas costs less. Everything.
So I guess those are the kind of consultants that I'm looking for, is what is our optimal operating levels, and, again, the different balancing levels to say, okay, we're getting the most bang for the buck and we're using what we're selling, and how to offset those costs with, the increases in the energy and the staffing and all that.
Yeah, well, it's maybe in a
The engineers, like, give you kind of cost like, I'm trying to give you the current versus. Actual current staff give you a very good indication of what. Staff.
Usually got a sewer, water and food. The fast over capacity is when you'll start to look at expanding.
Well, that's what we talked. We know the water plant's built to sell a lot more water. We're re-rating well, the sewer plant, when that's gonna be completed, so we're ready to go there. Again, you know, we expanded into Riga, however many years ago, 10, 15 years ago, whatever, that kind of really didn't do what we intended for it to do. They're not using the water. They overbuilt the system, which is causing us problems. You know, they're pretty much stagnant on wanting to develop. They fight themselves on development. So we're not selling, they're not utilizing the infrastructure that they put in. That's costing us more money.
Yeah.
The only option that I would say we look at too is if we bring in another big bulk water user somehow, we recruit them. Or potentially, we talk with Palmyra Township next door, which is totally ideal because they have their own separate county sewer system. So we would sell them the water because we have the capacity to sell them those large amounts. And then they deal with the sewer on their own. Again, who develops the infrastructure, whether it's Palmyra Township, Blissfield Village, that's another story. But again, it's how do we sell more water and get the more customers to pay for the system.
And we get that. Okay, that's gonna go, you're gonna, engineers are gonna have to be involved to figure out what is actually gonna be required. Can do, you know what I have. You get a good idea. Hey, this- the plan. Yeah, I am where you guys by the fact that, hey, all this was built by tons of water and ethanol plant, now they're not using it, and that's creating some additional issues.
If you add population. That over where you're no longer.
I mean, and that was consulted analytical issues when, because then that helps us get the tower built on that side of town, which we would wanna, you know, it helps us offset the cost there.
There's all.
For sun and water. So again, those are the kind of answers, the consulting, I guess, that I'm looking for. How do we say this is what we should do for maximum efficiency?
Yes, and when it comes to those kinds of decisions, get help from you can.
Have you,
You're gonna pay an engineer. You know, we can also, we can't run the numbers and do training for that, but we definitely can come and, you know, give our piece and add the discussion along with current staff that you have to help you guys make us the best educated decision.
have you seen municipalities lose capacity? So similar in our situation, they lose a large customer. They begin to re-engineer backward.
The only one I can think of off the top of my head, which John probably has more knowledge of, is, what was it, Ironwood or?
Yeah, ironwood. They have done, that's a tricky one, because there was some re-engineering on the distribution system. Was put in. Ironwood was 15,000 people, it's now 10,000 people. And,
Big mining town up in the.
Big mining town, it's the far more community in the state of Michigan. When you get there, you're on the other side of the but the other problem that's developed there is they now have a manganese problem. And over the coming national contaminant level that the EPA is going to probably put in sometimes. Years. Particularly in the middle of manganese removal plant. They have a high cost. Now they're upgrading. Downgrading.
Because I do know for that, like. Alleviate some of the price of placing name that doesn't have any current customers hooked to it, they kind of a pain.
One hundred, 7 people, 7 companies, and if they look at the cost of the hour, you know, you need to fight over. And we end up with
The downside to any of that, downside to that claiming is, like in Ironwood, unless the mining suddenly picks up there, that's really the only thing probably that's going to bring them back up. If you ever need it back. The cost. New stuff. actually. Something like that. It's, again, that's not it. We can give our 2 cents, but it's because you guys are dealing with a lot of. You know, it was okay for this band. That's pretty cool. What is that? Talking to Nora, where it's trading that out. You know, you guys. Yeah. Not an easy. It's not an easy. No, there's no easy. Where would we? We got set. This was supposed to be great. And has turned out to be great. Now, I want this on more people to fix them. It seems like we got into this, are doing that in the first place. I'm not hearing any places that anything's going to change or get fixed. This is about hoping to do. I don't think they want a budget, hoping to rain, that's not what we're doing.
You guys got anything else for John and Joe? We really appreciate you coming down. You guys are good.
Sorry, we didn't have better news.
It is what it is.
So you guys are on pretty good track for with your raise. And yes, I'm sure you've heard, you know, they're pretty high, but I've seen worse. I've seen much worse. And the ones that I've seen that are lower, more than likely within the next 5 years, we're gonna be right up those.
Whenever you see a list of like from the high to the low, you gotta look at who's on the low there and say, okay, that's.
Because we've run into that time and time again. So 5 years ago, there was a lot more systems that.
Kind of the leaders in the unfortunate situation of what getting the first ones to be the ones at the top that have to do this, which it seems like let's be kind of nitpicky on who they're going after.
Yeah, you're not the worst. I've seen much worse. I've seen higher rates.
I know a little worse than when you're allocating any down to one.
There are worse out there, you know. All right, does anybody, any other questions?
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time. Thank you.
I will say that the staff that you have had working in here was, we rely on them to provide us all the data, and they did a very, very good job of providing us. So we didn't go over some of the checks and balances here, but there are some checks and balances here. Yeah, you do.
Very weird.
Us.
The hardest number to get is how many gallons sold.
Thank you, guys.
Suggested approximately 22 cents. With their 5, 6.7, 4.0, 2.2. We're sitting at about 224 to 240, if I do that correctly. So, just to keep in mind, if we want to revisit it, have a mid-year adjustment.
Versus waiting for the full year.
Waiting for the.
I don't think I don't recall like. Is it something that would happen? Like, historical perspective?
No, but we've always said we would look at it quarterly, we just never did adjust it.
Maybe that's something Danielle. you mentioned.
Quarterly budget
Yeah.
adjustments for projections are permanent.
Yeah, so-
We've been making that, I mean, that's fine.
Correct. Last year we did not do an increase and then we had the 3% for this year. I mean, and I can tell you guys my plan moving forward now that the chart of account conversion is done and everything is to do a mid-year budget amendment and then also do the end of the year. So, I mean, that might be an opportunity too at mid-year. You guys are gonna be able to have a really good picture. I mean, and we send the monthly updates, but that's gonna be a very kind of 50% of the year is complete. This is where we're at. And could be a good time to look at that again as well.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's already on my calendar, so I'll just incorporate the fees as part of that conversation.
I'll say thank you for the dialogue.
Yeah,
You spent pretty much all day. You did.
I spent the afternoon with them today and then Nora, Brent, Randy, Brandon and I spent several days with them a while back. Going through, yeah. It's been a little bit. So we, not consultants necessarily, we do work with our engineers, and we just recently switched. We used to have Pogemeyer, which we still use them for the wastewater treatment plant because they had started that project, but we now use Manick and Smith. So we're working with them on updating some of they're going through our reliability study and our master plan. So we're trying to work on some of those things and just make sure we do have good information. And like you guys kind of brought it up, our focus and even this council and I appreciate it so much, has been super focused on maintenance and not like, instead of adding new things, let's take care of what we have. So that's really been our sole focus. It's just hard right now because one, funding, but getting contractors and the cost of everything to come in, like we have such a short construction window with a lot of this stuff that it makes it hard. Like we're limited in what we can actually physically do every year for work. So then, I mean, like I think it was Matt that alluded to it, like then that just raises that cost in 2-3 years, but there's no way, like we just, based on the amount of infrastructure and needs we have, to just come in and be like, all right, we're going to do this all this year. So it's finding that balancing act, I guess, if you will. But yeah, I would definitely agree with James. It was, I thought, a really good conversation across the board tonight.
You good? Anything else? Good. That's all we got.